Recording. There we go. Okay. So today, this is what we're going to be covering. We're going to start and talk a little bit about attachment theory. I'm not going to go too much in depth around that because I assume many of you already have some knowledge and that's why you're here. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the origins of your attachment style, unhealthy relationship patterns, and the inner child. Then I'm going to outline 3 ways that you can start healing and self-regulating, and then speak about what healing is really about. Then I'm going to show you a quick 2-minute video from some of my clients that will inspire you and show you that healing is indeed possible. And it is possible to start shifting from an anxious to more secure style. Then I'm going to tell you briefly about my upcoming group program that's called Secure in Love. And then make sure you stay until the end because we're going to have a live Q&A. Great. If at any point you can't hear me, the connection starts breaking up, just let me know in the chat. So I'm Cassandra. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a holistic trauma and relationship coach. Why I started doing this and getting into this line of work is because I've been in many unhealthy relationships with a combination of emotionally unavailable partners, narcissistic partners. Let's just say I've struggled a lot in my relationships. And about 5 or 6 years ago, I was just fed up and I said something has to change. I don't know what's going on here, but I want to go inward and finally break this pattern. And I did that. And that inspired me to start doing this work and coaching people and showing them how to do the same. And what I realized is relationships are mirrors. They mirror the parts within us that we need to heal. And so when we start healing these core wounds and changing ourselves within, then our relationships begin to change. And so as you can imagine, my focus is on creating healthy relationship patterns, on healing attachment wounds, healing deep trauma, and enabling my clients to finally have and attract the nourishing and loving relationships that they desire. I also specialize in working with empaths and highly sensitive. Let me know in the chat here if you identify as an empath or highly sensitive person, because often anxious attachment and empathy is connected. So let me know in the chat if we have any empaths here. Yes, Helen, Catalina, yeah, Patricia, great. And so I want to let you know a little bit about a competition that I'm running now. So if you want to win a 500 euros discount voucher that you can use for any of my programs or a free 90-minute session with me, just take a video or photo of this masterclass and then share it on Instagram as a story or a post and tag me. My handle is @IamCassMichael, or if you don't have Instagram, you can do the same on Facebook. Cassandra Michael, you can probably find me, and I'll do a draw tomorrow for 2 lucky participants. Great. So let's begin with some attachment theory. John Bowlby is a pioneer of attachment theory, and he defined attachment as the propensity of human beings to make strong, affectionate bonds to particular others. Attachment theory explains how and why we behave in certain reactive, distancing, and secure patterns in our most important relationships. So understanding these patterns and impulses better in yourself and your loved ones is an important first step to building skills that promote stable and lasting relationships. So this is why attachment theory can be so insightful and important if you want to build these deep, meaningful relationships. So here's an important piece of the puzzle. An attachment style develops from a child's expectations about the responsiveness of their attachment figure. I'm going to be speaking more about this shortly. So as most of you already know, we've got 4 basic attachment styles. Anxious, or otherwise called anxious preoccupied, the avoidant, otherwise called dismissive avoidant, disorganized, which is fearful avoidant, and secure. I'm going to be using the terms anxious, avoidant, disorganized, secure. I find that easier. For those of you who don't know, disorganized is a mix between anxious and avoidant, but I'm not going to go into that now. This masterclass is focused on the anxious style. And I want to actually point something out here. We all have attachment tendencies. So I don't want you to see yourself as only anxious. We all have traits, let's say, from different styles, but we have a tendency towards one. So right now, I'm more secure with anxious tendencies. In the past, I was definitely more anxious. But that being said, I could be with someone in a relationship that can push me to more avoidant. So depending who we're with, different attachment traits can be activated. So that's why it's important to not identify just with one, but you can't say that you have more tendencies towards a certain style. Right? And also these labels, it's more a way to help you navigate relationships and relational dynamics. We don't want to just label you and say, oh, you know, you're anxious, you're broken. No. This is just a roadmap. It's something that's going to help you so you can navigate your relationships in a more sustainable way. So here are some traits of the anxiously attached individual. So you may experience strong fears of being left or abandoned. You value and long for love and connection, and finding a romantic relationship is a top priority and can become an obsession sometimes. You frequently fantasize about love and the feelings of relief finding the one might give you. So let me know here, who thinks about love a lot and relationships a lot? Just drop a 1 in the chat. That's definitely the case for me. Since I can remember as a child, I've always fantasized about finding the perfect relationship. It's been a very present thing in my life. So an anxiously attached individual requires constant reassurance and validation that the people in our lives love and care about us. Yeah. And this is not only for romantic partners, it's family, friends. We just need that extra bit of reassurance. Sometimes you might feel like you're clingy or needy, or maybe some people in your life have told you this, have labeled you as such. It could be that you crave closeness and intimacy, but struggle to feel fulfilled. There's always this void. It's almost like something's missing. Maybe you're in a relationship, but there's something there that you can't really put your finger on, and you don't feel fully fulfilled. So you want more connection, more intimacy. It's like this feeling of love me more, love me better. Yeah. And that can create some struggles, let's say, for our partners who feel that they can't really live up to our expectations. And often for anxiously attached individuals, they might feel lonely as well, like they don't belong. Also, maybe that people don't really understand them, somewhat like outsiders. And especially if you're empaths, you probably feel that already. Yeah. So I'm going to speak now a little bit about the origins of anxious attachment. And before I do that, as a reminder, I want to tell you, you're not broken. You're not too needy. You're not too clingy. Okay, I want you to get all of that out of your head right now. There's nothing wrong with you. On the contrary, what's going on is that the anxiously attached individual is the manifestation of a child who did not feel seen and heard, a child who did not get the consistent love and affection it needed to feel emotionally safe. Right? So you had a lack of consistency growing up. So drop a 2 in the chat if this resonates. If you maybe craved more love and affection from your caregivers but didn't get it, or maybe you felt very lonely growing up, just drop a 2 in the chat if this resonates. And the result of this is a dysregulated nervous system that seeks regulation through connection, right? So just put yourself in the shoes of this child, or just think of a child, for example, that has inconsistent caregivers. We can't count on them to show up and help us regulate, right? So then that means this child is going to be filled with anxiety. That's the dysregulated nervous system. And usually, what do we do to soothe a child? We take the child in our arms, right? We hug it. We have to help a child to regulate, because children don't know how to do that by themselves. Yeah. And so as an anxiously attached individual growing up, we didn't have this, let's say, regulation from our parents when we needed it. Sometimes we did, sometimes we didn't. So yeah, this created a lot of uncertainty. And that's why I'm going to speak about this moving forward, that having certainty, consistency, and stability in our relationships is very important for us. And when that doesn't happen, we feel a lot of anxiety. Yeah. So let me know if this makes sense. And here, I just want to highlight that you're not broken or weak. Your behaviors are a result of attachment wounding and coping mechanisms that you adopted growing up. And as I'm going to mention moving forward, when we blame ourselves, when we judge ourselves, we're not going to heal like that, right? So this is the first very important step to healing. It's understanding where this comes from and then having compassion for ourselves. Can you let me know in the chat, just drop a 3 if this makes sense, and if you understand the origins of the anxious attachment. Perfect. Right. And now I'm going to speak a little bit about unhealthy relationship patterns and the anxiously attached individual. So maybe you've asked yourself, why do I keep attracting emotionally unavailable or narcissistic people? Drop a 4 in the comments if you've asked yourself this. I know I asked myself this many, many times in the past. It was like, why me? Why does this keep happening to me? I just wanted to stop, right? Yes. So Carla, Katie. So something to reflect on. Do you see how these people are inconsistent with their love and their presence? So the narcissistic partner, the emotionally unavailable partner. Do you see how this inconsistency is very present? And what did I say before is that this childhood wounding, this attachment wounding was caused due to inconsistent presence of our caregivers. So the truth is, we don't attract and choose the love we think we deserve. We attract and choose the love that feels familiar. Yeah. So we're going to be drawn to these emotionally unavailable people or narcissistic people because they feel like home. And often when we meet someone and maybe we've got this feeling and we're like, you really feel like home to me. In that moment, I want you to stop and reflect on what home actually felt like. And if when somebody feels like home, if that's actually a good thing or an indication of healthy love. And ask yourself, how are your partners similar to one of your parents? Usually what we see here is we will attract partners that are similar to the opposite sex parents. So if we're talking about heterosexual relationships, you'll have a tendency to attract partners that are similar to your opposite sex parent. Yeah, because we always also try to get closure in our relationships. So let's say, for example, my father is he was present, but he was very shut off emotionally. You can say he's emotionally unavailable. And in my adult relationships, I would often attract emotionally unavailable men where I was craving and yearning for their attention. I just wanted more of their love. I wanted them to stop being so passive and just like show up and love me the way I wanted them to. So yeah, we tend to do this, and it's almost like we're trying to get closure through our adult relationships. We're trying to get the love and the affection we never got growing up. And also, like I said, we gravitate towards the familiar, because if we meet someone and they just open-handedly give us their love and their affection, that's going to feel foreign, right? We're not going to know what to do with it. So instead, we go to and gravitate towards the familiar, even if the familiar creates suffering and sadness and anxiety. Yeah. And now I'd like you to just take a moment and tune into what similarities do you see between how you felt and acted growing up and how you feel and act in your adult relationships. Do you see any similarities? So I know for me, when I was growing up, I felt lonely a lot, and I was constantly craving for love. And this is how I feel, or how I used to feel in my adult relationships. It was always this feeling of, I'm giving so much love, but I'm not getting anything in return. Or I'm doing all of the things, yet he's not showing up for me the way I need him to. It was always this yearning, this wanting for more. Yeah. So just drop a 5 in the chat if this resonates, and let me know, what similarities do you find between how you felt growing up and your adult relationships? Let me know how it was for you. And in order to tune into this, we're just going to take a moment, and I'd like you to just close your eyes, and we're just going to do like a very short visualization where I want you to connect with your younger self. So just take a deep breath. Close your eyes for a moment. You can also put your hand on your heart. And just relax your jaw, relax your shoulders. And I want you to picture that you're walking down a path, and this path leads to your childhood home. And I want you to open the door and step into the house. And go and find your younger self. Go and find little you. And connect with him or her for a moment. Ask the child how it feels, what it needs. Is it happy, sad? Just take a moment to connect. How did you feel when you were younger? Was it easy? Was there time for play? Or did you have too many responsibilities? Maybe you didn't feel safe and supported. Connect with that child. Now you can just open your eyes. And this was like a very, very short visualization. And this is something that you can do by yourself. And it's part of inner child healing. And we're going to go into that shortly. But now, just from this very short time of connecting with your younger self, how did he or she feel? Let me know in the chat. Fearful, lonely, sad. Yeah, what came up for you? Just let me know. Empty and lonely, worried, pushed aside. Sad, rejected, in danger, restricted, uncertain. Yes. Mm-hmm. And tell me, do you see similarities between how you felt growing up, all these feelings, and your adult relationships? And bear in mind, right now, we just connected with our younger selves for 2-3 minutes. And you got so many insights. And what you did now is part of inner child healing. So for those of you who are not familiar, the inner child, is the unconscious part of the mind where we carry our unmet needs, suppressed childhood emotions, our creativity, our intuition, and our ability to play. I like to see it as every human being has a wounded inner child within them. And when you're feeling anxious, for example, in your relationships, when you're getting triggered, it's your younger self that is reacting. It's your inner child that did not get the love and affection it needed growing up, right? So when we have this deep-seated fear of abandonment, it's our inner child that is afraid of getting abandoned. Yeah. So inner child healing is a core part of healing our attachment wounds. And this is something that I go into in depth during my 9-week program, Secure in Love. I'm going to be sending you an inner child healing meditation as well. So after this masterclass, just keep an eye out for my emails, and I'll have a link to a guided inner child meditation so you can go deeper and start healing those wounds. Here is a breakdown of certain family dynamics, beliefs, and behaviors. So again, we want to see how growing up impacted the way we show up in our adult relationships. So let's say we have the family dynamic of enmeshment. Enmeshment essentially is when there aren't any boundaries in the family, and maybe you grew up too soon and you took on responsibilities that weren't yours to take. Maybe you had to take care of a caregiver, or one of your parents came to you and would share their problems. Yeah, that's enmeshment. And a limiting belief that often comes from that is my needs and emotions don't matter. And the result can be codependency or people pleasing. And especially for the empaths here, right? Who identifies as also being a people pleaser. Then you have the family dynamic of emotional neglect, or just neglect. Then there could be the belief that's formed that nobody cares about me, nobody loves me. And the result is having low self-worth. And as a consequence, we chase love, right? So for those of us with anxious tendencies, we might be settling for breadcrumbs sometimes, right? So we're in a relationship, we're not really getting our needs met, but we're afraid to end it, or we forgive the other person, and we're constantly chasing and clinging on love because deep down we have this fear of abandonment. Yeah, and we didn't get this love growing up. If we had a family dynamic where our parents were emotionally unavailable, a limiting belief that was formed is love has to be earned, right? So I have to work really hard in order to get my parents' approval, in order to get my parents' love. Sometimes this is where perfectionism comes from as well, or the high achievers. A result can be emotional hunger and being needy. Another common family dynamic is the misattunement of our caregivers. So maybe we were really sad and our mother, for example, said, oh, stop crying. There's no reason to be sad. And our emotions were invalidated, or we didn't feel connected to our caregivers. Then there's the limiting belief of I'm disconnected. And I don't know about you, but this is very prominent for me. in my life. Often I'll feel very, very disconnected from my friends, from my family, and just feeling really alone, right? So that's a result. And then the behavior is always seeking connection. In my 20s, I had so many friends. I was always out, I was always partying. I did whatever I could to sort of fill this void within, right? And I filled it with connection. That was the one thing that somewhat fueled me. Right? And this makes sense again for the anxiously attached individual. Whereas if we're looking at somebody with avoidant tendencies, they're not going to get, let's say, they're not going to fill the void through connection. Another family dynamic is inconsistent caregivers, as we already mentioned. Then there's maybe the limiting belief of I will be abandoned. So the result is having this deep-rooted fear of abandonment, and a behavior could be being clingy, being needy. Yeah. So does all of this give you a better understanding of where your attachment wounding comes from and why you act in certain ways in your adult relationships? And hopefully this understanding will also allow you to practice self-compassion and be kinder and softer with yourselves when these behaviors do emerge. I'm going to show you here as well also some core beliefs. So we spoke a little bit about certain limiting beliefs that are formed. And here are the differences between anxious attachment and secure attachment. So the anxiously attached individual might feel like I have to earn love, right? That's a limiting belief due to certain dynamics that I mentioned before, right? Whereas the securely attached individual will feel like love is my birthright. Of course, I'm worthy of love. Yeah, I don't have to do anything to get it. It's my birthright. The anxiously attached individual might feel like I'm unloved. Nobody cares or loves me, whereas my family and friends love and care about me. Anxiously attached, I don't belong, I'm excluded. Secure attachment sounds like no matter where I go, I feel a deep sense of belonging. Belonging has a lot to do with self-acceptance. And if you want to read up more about this, I love Braving the Wilderness from Brené Brown, and she speaks about the topic of belonging. And how our sense of belonging can only be as high as our level of self-acceptance. The anxiously attached individual might feel responsible about other people's emotions, or we might even think that other people are also responsible for how we feel, right? Whereas somebody with a secure attachment knows that everyone, including myself, is responsible for their own emotions, right? So we don't caretake, we don't people please, we don't try and shift other people's feelings. The anxiously attached will think I will be abandoned and I'm alone. In secure attachment, we feel that I'm always safe and supported. Anxious attachment sounds like I'm disconnected, I'm disliked, whereas secure attachment sounds like I have a strong connection with myself, my heart, and my intuition, but also those around me. Yeah, so who struggles with self-doubt? That's another big one that comes up in a lot of my clients. So not trusting ourselves, not trusting our intuition, not even maybe trusting our capacity to pick the right partners. Drop a 2 in the chat if you struggle with self-doubt. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. This has a lot to do with connection to self, right? And when we have these beliefs of like, I'm disconnected. Mm-hmm. Also, people pleasing is a result of disconnection because we're so used to catering to the needs and the desires of others that we haven't learned to tune into our own needs. Mm-hmm. Great. So the anxiously attached individual will think love will be taken away from me, whereas secure attachment looks like love is present everywhere I go. Anxious attachment is love is uncertain and non-reciprocal. Secure attachment is the love I give myself is consistent and unwavering. Yeah, so these are just some examples of if you start to do mindset work and limiting belief work, what anxious attachment looks like, and then how you can start transitioning into secure attachment. And this is a big part of the work that we do in my program, Secure in Love. So we'll look at these limiting beliefs, and then we'll start to reprogram them by healing the traumas that created these beliefs in the first place. And so from these beliefs, from the anxious attachment style, which one do you resonate with most? Drop one belief in the chat that really stuck out for you, and you're like, yeah, this is me. I totally feel this one. Oh, sorry. This is something else I want to speak about. Love is uncertain. Okay, let me let you go. No one cares about me. I'm unloved. Yeah. I'm disconnected. One way to check is you just say the belief out loud and see how your body reacts. Or you can do the opposite. If you take the empowering beliefs and you say something, for example, my family and friends love and care about me. You say the empowering belief, and then maybe it's like your body is just rejecting it and being like, no, they don't. That's like one way to check which beliefs we've internalized or not. Yeah, so just merely saying it out loud, tuning in and being like, okay, how is my body reacting right now? Yeah, love will be taken away from me. Love is uncertain, disconnected. I don't belong. Great. And so I'm going to speak a little bit about love addiction versus love deficiency. Or should I say, there's this term floating around, love addiction, which I personally hate that term because there's a lot of shame attached to it. And do some of you almost feel like you're love addicts? You think about relationships so much. It's a number one priority in your life. You're just craving for more connection, more love, more intimacy, right? It almost feels like it becomes an obsession, feels like an addiction. And I really hate the word addiction because it carries a lot of shame, and shame just perpetuates the cycle, right? It doesn't enable us to heal. Instead of seeing ourselves as love addicts, I prefer to look at it as that we suffer from love deficiency. So we just did not get the love and the affection that we needed growing up. Hence, we wanted more right now. Does that make sense? And so I wrote an article about this for Elephant Journal recently, and I can include that in the email as well. So this was just like a small side note. Again, allowing us to practice more acceptance and self-compassion. Great. So let's go into 3 ways to start healing and self-regulating, because these 2 things, in my opinion, go hand in hand. Firstly, so I'm going to say this again and again until it lands, is realize that it's your wounded inner child reacting, not your adult self. Stop the cycle of shame. Yeah. So when you're being needy, when you're being clingy, when you have all this anxiety coming up and you're acting in ways that you're not proud of, realize that it's your wounded inner child, not your adult self. Yeah. This is a very, very important step to healing. And to make this more specific, when intense emotions start coming up, I want you to identify the fear behind the trigger and soothe your inner child. Yeah, so this is called reparenting. Reparenting is essentially giving ourselves or our inner child the love and the affection our parents weren't able to. Right? So we're going to start soothing our inner child. And this actually leads to emotional regulation. So when you're feeling high anxiety in a relationship, there's a trigger that's coming up. If you do this, it's going to help you to calm down and ground yourself. So let's take an example. I love this meme over here. So anxiously attached people trying to figure out why someone isn't texting back. Yeah, who can relate to this one? Let me know in the chat. So this is like, used to be totally me, used to go into this frenzy. Why aren't they responding? What could I have done? Do they not love me anymore? Maybe I'm not good enough. They're mad at me. Did I say something right? And then you go into this like cycle of obsessive thinking and craziness that just perpetuates the anxiety, right? Okay. So let's take this as an example. Somebody is not texting back, right? So I want you to reflect and tell me, what is the fear? What is the underlying fear there? And why is the situation creating anxiety for you? So based on what we discussed up until now, let me know in the chat, what is the underlying fear around them not responding? So Helen says, I've done something to displease them. I'm not, Max says, I'm not enough, not good enough, abandonment. I feel like I've done something wrong and they will be angry. They're upset at me. Yes. Said something wrong, don't like me enough. Yeah, great. So all of the comments that were around, I'm not enough, I've done something to displease them, I've done something wrong, they're upset at me. So why is that an issue? If somebody's upset at me, why is it an issue? Because they might abandon me, right? So the core fear here is abandonment. Even if it's, oh, I'm not good enough. So why does that matter? I'm not good enough. So what does that mean? They might leave me. They might abandon me. They'll stop loving me. They don't like me. Yes. So it's very important to just connect with the underlying fear, see where it's coming from, and then notice that it's your inner child, right? They're going to stop loving me. They're going to abandon me. So imagine how it is for a child to not have their parents around, right? They're not able to self-regulate. They feel that like they've been abandoned. It is excruciating. The pain is crazy, right? And that is exactly how you feel when somebody's not texting you back. Essentially, you're reliving the past trauma of your inner child. You're in a trauma response, right? It's your wounded inner child reacting. And that's why it's like, sometimes we feel like it doesn't make sense. Okay, this person didn't respond to a message. So what, right? It's like, I'm still here. I'm an adult. I can navigate the world. And we're like, okay, why am I overreacting? Because you're in a trauma response. What you're experiencing is all this fear of abandonment that you did as a child. And trauma is stored in the body. And this is something I work on a lot with my clients, is releasing trauma from the body, right? And that's what triggers are. It's old trauma coming up to the surface. Yeah. And so what this would look like is, let's say the person's not responding. You have this deep-rooted fear of abandonment. You're in fight or flight. You have obsessive thoughts. You're engaging in deactivating strategies. So deactivating strategies are essentially things that we try and do to minimize our pain and suffering. So that might look like calling the person 20 times, sending 50 messages, calling friends and being like, oh, have you seen John? Have you heard from John? He hasn't responded to me, right? So these are things that we will try and do in order to minimize our pain and our discomfort. Instead of doing these deactivating strategies, though, which normally backfire, I want you to start practicing inner child healing and reparenting. So you notice what your wounded inner child is saying. right? Essentially, you guys told me that in the chat, right? They'll stop loving me. They don't like me. They'll stop talking to me. I put some examples here. I'm not wanted. I'm excluded. I'm not lovable. I'm not good enough, right? That's what your inner child is thinking. And then I want you to show up as your wise inner parent and say, people's behavior does not mean anything about me and my work. This person might be busy or dealing with their own problems. And then you literally connect with your inner child and say, you're safe, you're worthy, you're wanted. I'm here for you. You're not alone. Yeah. Doing this. So when you're on high alert, when you're in a trigger, just taking some deep breaths, connecting with your inner child and saying these soothing mantras, this is going to enable healing, and it's also going to help you self-regulate. Yeah. So drop a 5 in the chat if this makes sense. I've got some mantras here that you can use. So you're safe. I'm here for you. I'm not going to leave you. You're worthy of love. You don't have to betray yourself for love. It's safe to relax now. Yeah, here are some mantras that I really like using. And essentially, you want to make your inner child feel safe. No one's leaving you. I'm here for you. You're not alone. Yeah, something like that. Imagine that you were soothing a child that you love dearly. Same thing. And another core part here is practicing self-compassion. So I'm not going to go into depth around self-compassion. Instead, I'm going to send you a link to a self-compassion journal that I normally give to my clients. And it's something that you can start doing daily. And this is a transformational practice. And it's foundational for deep trauma healing and healing these attachment wounds. Right? And this is something that you can combine with the reparenting process. So your inner critic is the voice of one of your caregivers. And that's why self-compassion is also very important. And this is how how it's connected to the initial attachment wounding. So it looks like somebody drew on the presentation, and I don't know how to delete that. You see that line over there. Okay, give me one moment. Number 2, the second part of healing is how can you, so essentially you want to create consistency in your life, right? Because what did we say in the very beginning? These feelings of, or our inconsistent caregivers created these attachment wounds. So inconsistency is a huge trigger for the anxiously attached individual. That's why when we're with avoidant partners who maybe disappear for a couple of days, who don't respond to messages, this will act as a huge trigger for us. So it's important to create consistency in our lives. So I'm going to ask you, how can you create feelings of safety, stability, and consistency in your life? So not depending on others for this, but doing it for yourself. Yeah, maybe this looks like having a set routine every day, sticking to certain decisions that you make for yourself and your well-being. So if it's like, okay, I'm going to meditate 10 minutes a day, that's a practice that creates consistency. Or that you have a certain job, or you're saving money. Maybe you have consistent self-love practices. Also, reflect on if there are certain people in your life that you know that you can depend on, that you know will be there. And then we can also heal through interdependency. So for the anxiously attached individual, when we're in relationships, this is not only romantic, it could be family, it could be friends, where people show us that they're not going to leave, they're sticking around and they're here for us. That helps to rewire our nervous system and heal these deeper attachment wounds. Okay. Number 3, so the third step for healing is creating a strong sense of self. So somebody with a strong sense of self knows exactly who they are, what they want, what makes them happy, is clear around their needs. And it's also about finding meaning in other areas of life. Because the anxiously attached individual tends to derive meaning and get all their needs met through relationships, right? So relationships are our number one priority, and then we try and get all our needs met through the sphere of relationships. So it's important here to try and do that outside of relationships. So connect with your purpose. See what brings meaning outside of relationships for you. Start to cultivate that. And then it's also the elements of learning how to set healthy boundaries and cultivating self-worth. So these are all basic pillars of my program, Secure in Love, and where we go deep and I give you tools to create healthy boundaries, to cultivate self-worth, and to get crystal clear on who you are and what you deserve. So this is something that we go into in depth during my program. So essentially, the anxiously attached individual derives their sense of self from their relationships. So when one of their relationships is failing, the feeling can be comparable to a slow death of self. This is how painful and agonizing it can feel. And so that's why what I mentioned, it's important to connect with your purpose, to shift your energy and focus on something else that makes life meaningful. So where attention goes, energy flows. Here, a good example is if you're in a relationship or maybe you're dating someone and some of your anxious tendencies have been activated, you'll probably go into this obsessive thinking, right? Just like we discussed with the text message. That is a trauma response. Sometimes what can really help is just to shift our focus. So I'm not advocating that you bypass these emotions. We want to first sit with our inner child. We want to acknowledge the fear that's there. We want to feel the pain and the discomfort and self-soothe, but then choose to shift the focus, right? So you don't want to sit and ruminate. Instead, do something else that brings you joy. So instead of thinking about the relationship and engaging in all of these, let's say, thinking areas that might be coming up, go out and, maybe you play an instrument. Maybe you really enjoy your work. So you start working a bit on a project. Maybe you can call a friend. So just try and connect to something else that brings meaning into your life so that you can shift your focus and remind yourself that it's not only about relationships. Yeah. And so have your pen and paper ready. I want you to write this down, but there's a trigger warning. Stop idealizing love. A relationship is not going to save you. You are. And so even when I read this now, I get a bit triggered myself because I have this belief deep in my heart that we are here to give and receive love and relationships. It's the most important thing. I truly, at my core, believe that. But I've also noticed that my idealization of love has also created a lot of suffering for me. And I expected that finding the one or having this healthy relationship is going to be the solution to all my problems. It's not, because also being in a healthy and committed relationship takes a lot of work. Yeah. So first and foremost, you are going to save yourself. But again, something that I mentioned before, you can heal through consistent, stable, and loving relationships. So this is the interdependency. Yeah, we don't want to idealize love, but we still want to keep in mind that through these nurturing and loving relationships, healing becomes possible because we start rewiring our nervous system. And so what healing is and isn't, in my opinion, healing isn't about being comfortable with avoidant behavior. Yeah. So sometimes I hear my clients say, oh yeah, I just want to be really relaxed when he doesn't, respond to my text message, or when it takes him 3 days to respond to my text message, right? We don't want to be comfortable with avoidant behavior. It's healing's about walking away from emotionally unavailable people, right? It's about knowing our worth. It's about healing the wounds that make the unavailable and the abusive attractive, right? So we don't want to do this healing work so that we can put up with abuse or emotional unavailability, right? Or avoidant behavior. It's so that we know our worth and we can choose ourselves over and over again. And choosing people who are good for us in our nervous system. Yeah. And healing is about trusting yourself to choose healthy love. And that's another part that my clients always tell me that, Cass, I don't know what healthy love looks like, right? Because they didn't grow up maybe in supportive and loving family environments. And that's another thing I address in my group program, Secure in Love. And we look at like how we can identify red flags and what healthy love actually looks like, so that we can choose relationships and people that are for our highest good. And another question I always get is, can I heal? So even, clients, they hop on discovery calls with me and they tell me their issues and they're like, but is it even possible? Can I shift to a more secure attachment style? Can I break free from these patterns? Can I finally find a healthy and loving relationship? So instead of me just saying, yes, you can, I made this little compilation of client testimonials. It's just 2 minutes. It's really short. And hopefully this will inspire you to continue doing this work and see that healing is possible for you myself too.
From a year ago almost. So that's how much progress I feel I've made in a year. And I came in with, I didn't know what I needed. I didn't know what I wanted. And I've now left the coaching sessions last week knowing exactly what I want and what I need. Like, the awareness is insane. It's actually mind-blowing.
I met a person and we had a really, we now achieved a really like in-depth relationship. That's this connection, like this like depth of connection I have never like had before with any other person in my life.
It's definitely made me more open and also safe to be open. I'm much more capable of letting others love me for who I am in all my wonderful imperfection. And I love that.
Definitely my breakthrough with boundary settings was my huge aha moment. That's just shifted my life in such a huge way.
So I recently met this guy on a dating app, and it's turned into something that I never imagined could have happened. He's kind, he cares, he's got a big heart, he's emotionally available. I'm also emotionally available. Within like the first few months, I ended up talking about being vulnerable and opening up to him about how I've been working on becoming a better version of myself, and talked a little bit about triggers and patterns. And it was a safe space and it was reciprocated. This guy's not fazed by anything. It's really attractive. And it's just, just great. I often wonder where this guy has popped up from, and let's see what happens. But it's really good.
It's scary, but life begins at the edge of your comfort zone, and if you're willing to do the work on yourself, then I would fully recommend it. Really worthwhile. Absolutely. I couldn't be happier right now.
But what I would like to say is investment on yourself is never wrong there, because the money, they come and they go. but the peace and the, you know, alignment that you get to feel when you find yourself, it's priceless. And
yeah, so hopefully that inspired you a little bit and showed you that healing is most definitely possible, and it does not have to take years and years. So just let me know here in the chat, put me, who's ready to break these unhealthy patterns? Who's ready to go into a more secure style of relating and having a loving relationship without the drama, anxiety, and heartbreak of the past? Just drop a me in the chat if you're feeling inspired to do this work and you feel like it's time for you. Yes, great. Right. Catalina, Patricia, Sabrina, Louise, Fariha, Emerald. Yes, I see you. Carla, Alex, everyone. Yes, everyone. Great. So if you're ready for this, my group program, Secure in Love, starts soon, September 25th. It's a 9-week potent group coaching container, and it's going to help you to break free from these unhealthy relationship patterns so that you can finally have the loving, stable, and committed relationship that you desire. So I'm going to, along with the email, I'm going to be sending the link to the sales page. I can drop it here in the chat as well. And because you attended the masterclass, you also get an extra 50 euros discount. And right now I'm giving a really big discount on the program rates because I wanted to make it more accessible for more people. Next round, the pricing is going to go up. So I really suggest that if you feel called right now to do the work, now is the time. So yeah, I'll share all of this information with you in the email as well. And don't hesitate to reach out for me if you also want to schedule a call so that we can see if the program is a good fit for you. Amazing. So yeah, that was the masterclass. And now we have the Q&A. So let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer them. It can be questions about the masterclass, but also about the group program. Feel free to let me know what's in your mind.
I have a question, Cassandra.
Okay, let me see. Anka, is that you? Sorry, I'm just
Yes,
trying.
it's me.
Great. Should I? 1 second. Great. Yeah.
So basically for me, I was a complete anxious behavior. It comes a lot from the family. My dad was kind of like yours. So basically that was like the root of the traumas. And of course, that was very present in the relationships that I have. I soon went out from a relationship that was exactly like this, and you know a little bit the story. And I think this relationship helped me to heal this wounds. But what I'm noticing now, and this is what I wanted to ask you, is so I ended up the relationship, I don't know, two months ago, something like this. And I've noticed that most of the guys that I'm meeting now, they are unavailable, emotional. But the good part is that I'm walking away from all of them. But I'm walking away like, you know, I don't look at, I don't care. But my question is, why do they still show up? Just to show me? Just to test me if I learned the lesson or not? Or there is still something there that needs to be fixed?
I love your question. So intuitively, I'm going to ask, what part within you is still emotionally unavailable?
What part of the needs and emotion? I don't know. I'm after a relationship, so probably there is something in me also. Yeah. I mean, I'm not willing to like dive in a relationship right now. But on the other hand, if I like meet someone really nice that, you know, it's like according to my needs, definitely I will not say, you know, no. I just went out from a relationship. No, even if you are what I want, I will say no.
So normally my perception of this is that there could be, especially if we've done a lot of work, there could be a part within us that's still emotionally unavailable, in the sense that we're afraid to be truly vulnerable and open up, right? So there's still just that part within us that maybe is afraid of love, right? And so maybe that's something you could look at. And another thing I'd like to point out is that there are a lot of emotionally unavailable people in this world, right? And there are a lot of narcissistic people, and it doesn't always have to mean something, right?
No, okay.
Like, it doesn't always have to mean that you attract these people, that it's something within you. Like, let's be honest, there are a lot of different.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's true.
Out in this world. So it's like, give ourselves some slack, and we don't have to attribute meaning to everything. And I know, especially in the spiritual communities, we like to do that, and we like to take accountability for everything that appears in our reality. But sometimes it's just like, okay, well, there's a lot of people that are afraid of commitment right now, or emotionally unavailable, and I'm going to bump into them. And it's up to me every time to say, you know, no, if this person's not for me, to walk away. And I think that's the most important thing. And then just noticing how open you are to love, actually. Or are there still parts within you that are afraid of love, or afraid of being vulnerable? And then, noticing also potentially your feminine energy, and if you're open to attracting this type of man, or could you still have a sort of masculine shield that's protecting you? So just some questions to maybe reflect.
Okay.
Is there
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So you guys are welcome to either ask the question through the video or on the chat. Helen asks, when doing inner child healing and reparenting or self-soothing, does it take a long time to retrain yourself? So Helen, when you say a long time, what do you mean? How long you would have to practice these techniques, or could you give a little bit more context to your question? Okay, so Fariha says, how long does it take to move from an anxious to secure attachment? Okay, so I think these are two different questions, right? So Helen, you're asking, how long does it take to self-regulate? Is that what you're asking? So if you're in a trauma response, if you're really anxious and then you do some of the inner child techniques, how long does it take to self-soothe? Okay. This really depends on the trigger. So how strong the trigger is, and how much work you've done. So the more we do this, the more we train ourselves in our nervous system, the easier it becomes to come back to baseline levels, right? It's just like going to the gym. If I go to the gym now and I haven't worked out in 2 years, I'm not going to be able to lift really heavy weights, right? But if I continue doing the work, then I'm going to be able to do that. So this is just about repeating the practices, and then you become better, let's say, and you'll return to baseline levels sooner. And so this like self-soothing inner child technique, that's one of the ways. There are other ways as well that can be effective, especially if you're in a really intense trauma response. And these are things that I talk about in my group coaching program. But I believe in the beginning, it's going to be maybe a little bit challenging, and then it just keeps on becoming easier and easier. And it all depends, like I said, on the trigger and on your nervous system and how you react to stress as a person. So it's very hard for me to give a generalized answer to that question. Awesome. And Fariha asks, how long does it take to move from anxious to secure? I'm going to say 9 weeks because that's how long my program is, but maybe a little bit longer than that. Again, I can't give a generalized answer to this question. It depends on your willingness to do the work. It depends on your willingness to go inwards and face your attachment wounding and your traumas. It depends on who you're working with and how effective the tools and techniques are that they're using. Yeah, it really depends on a multitude of factors. But one thing I can tell you is that it does not depend on how traumatic your past was, because I've worked with people that have gone through hugely traumatic things. And after 3 or 4 months of working together with me one-on-one, for example, we cleared up so much trauma that they can self-regulate. They're making healthy choices. You saw in the testimonial, right? These are clients that work with me. They did my group program, which was 9 weeks, and then some of them did some follow-up one-to-ones, but it wasn't more than 5 months or 6 months in total. So generally, that's how much I work with my clients, and that's the time I need to get them results. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. And a last thing is, as I mentioned, we're always going to have remnants of our attachment styles. So I've done a lot of work on myself, but still, if I'm with somebody that's super avoidant or narcissistic, I'm going to get totally pushed into my anxious tendencies, right? So like I said in the one slide, it's not about being able to sit with abusive or avoidant behavior. It's about walking away from it. Perfect. Does anybody else have a question? Carla asks, I fear I'm still afraid of getting love from another person. What can I do to relax a little bit more? So Carla, what is the fear really behind that? So you said, I fear I'm still afraid of getting love. So what's the root there? What are you really afraid of? Let's unpack that a little bit. And if you feel comfortable, feel free to step on to the video. Otherwise, you can continue in the chat, whatever is best for you.
Hello. Truly, I think I am afraid that I might be lied to or cheated on or something like that.
Okay.
I have difficulties in trusting people. Again, that's it.
There you go. Okay. So then you have to look at this wound, right? Of not trusting people. And could it be not trusting men? I don't know. Are you attracted to men or? Yeah.
Yes.
So we want to look at the relationship. Potentially you can look at the relationship with your father. I don't know if there's any resonance there around trust. And seeing where that trust wound actually comes from. And then starting to do the trauma healing and the inner child healing on that. And seeing what limiting beliefs you have as well around love and trust, right? And another thing that I find very helpful, started raining. I don't know if you guys can hear the rain. Is usually we actually distrust another because we don't trust ourselves. How would you show up in the world differently if you knew that you can pick up on the red flags, you can trust yourself enough to walk away when it's time, or even if they do cheat and lie, that you've got what it takes to get through it, right? You're resilient enough. How would you show up differently knowing that you've got this and you can trust yourself fully to take care of you? Does that resonate?
Thank you. Yes, yes. And I already did it for a while. You know, getting rid of people who were, you know, trying to lie or something like that.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for 8 months since I broke up with my previous partner. But again, I feel like I am still afraid of trusting people. So maybe it is something I am attracting again, people who are emotionally unavailable, who are, you know, who want to lie, who don't want a serious relationship. That was my, you know, the real question was this: is that because of me? What can I do to open fully and trust better?
So if we were working one-to-one, the way I would approach this, can you guys still hear me, or is the rain really crazy right now? You can, okay. Can you hear the rain or not? No. Okay, that's good because it's really loud. Okay, trying to concentrate. So how I would approach this if we were working one-to-one is I would look at the limiting beliefs that you have around trust and see where they're stored in the body. So where have you got this trauma stored in your body? And then I do a type of regression with my clients. So we tune into the trauma. I do a regression and you'll come up with a traumatic memory which created this imprint. So you've got an imprint in your system around why you should not trust people, or why you're not safe, or that love is not safe. There's something around that, right? So the way I work is to trace it back to the traumatic event which created this imprint. And then I use tapping, or otherwise called EFT, if you're familiar, to release the trauma. Yeah. And then I do mindset and limiting belief work to start reprogramming the belief. So if you have a belief that says men can't be trusted, or love isn't safe, or I'll be lied to, whatever the belief is, then we want to make it empowering and positive, and maybe something like, I can trust and surrender. Men are trustworthy. I am safe. And then I also look at ways that how you can start embodying that on a daily basis. So how would you show up differently if you truly believe that? So it's like a combination of trauma work, mindset work, inner child healing, and then embodied action. That's how I work. So, and if you're interested, you can book a discovery call with me and we can discuss this in more detail if it's something that you would like to explore.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So, any other questions? So Brandy says, I run into bad people and have all my life. Even my own boss I worked for was awfully mean to me. I had to quit that job. I couldn't take any more verbal and emotional abuse. I believe she was a narc, no doubt about it. Yes, Brandy, I hear you. Do you have a question attached to that? In the meantime, okay. So well, now they're stalking me and it's driving me crazy. Okay, yeah, that's not fun. Is there any specific question you have that I could answer? And in the meantime, if anybody else has questions, like feel free to drop them in the chat, or you can come up on video. Alex asked, if I had a parent that yelled a lot, how did this affect me? Okay, Alex, hold that thought. Let me get back to Brandy. She said, I want to know why I run into narcs. So this is something we unpack during my program. And I also have another free workshop that I can send you. Essentially, you're replaying old childhood dynamics. And you said you're an empath, and we have the toxic attraction between the empath and the narcissist, right? So the empath is usually an overgiver, people pleaser, and the narcissist usually just wants to take, right? So we make a very good match because the empath people pleaser doesn't have boundaries and just gives without reserve, and the narcissist wants to take and get their needs met. So that's why we make such a good fit. And essentially, you want to see how this is, how you're replaying old childhood dynamics. Does this feel familiar to how you felt growing up? Maybe one of your parents had narcissistic traits. And often from my experience, and this is an area of expertise for me, is I think what we need to learn here is self-worth and self-love. Yeah, and how to set boundaries. So we are somehow attracting these people to us, and these narcissists are teaching us to create a strong sense of self and start to say no to things that don't serve us. Yeah, so you said your dad was a narcissist too. That's your answer. That is why you are attracting them. And it's an invitation to start healing these deeper wounds so that you can break the pattern once and for all. Yeah, well, that's good that you set boundaries. Mm-hmm. Okay. So Brandy, let me know if that answers your question. I'm going to go to Alex. So Alex says, if I had a parent that yelled a lot, how did this affect me? So Alex, is it, I'm assuming there was like maybe criticism, or was there a lot of judgment from this parent? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Alex says yes. One way it might affect us is that we will internalize this critical inner voice. So tell me, do you tend to be very self-judgmental? Do you have really high expectations or standards for yourself? Do you judge yourself a lot? Mm-hmm. So let me know. Yes is the answer. Exactly. And so I want you to realize that this inner critic is actually the voice of your caregiver. So that's one way it's going to affect us. And another way is you probably internalized certain, let's say, limiting beliefs about your worthiness. So maybe you made the conclusion that you're not worthy of love, or that you're not good enough. And then these limiting beliefs are going to affect your life and your relationships. Yeah. Does this make sense? Right. Brandy says, how do you break a trauma bond? Great question. And I have a workshop on my website called Unchained from Love. And it's 2 hours, and I address exactly this topic. It's 97 euros. So I can drop the link in the chat if you want to go and check that out. Yeah, it's not really something I can get into now in the Q&A because it's a really long, extensive answer. But yeah, you can check out the workshop. It's a 2-hour workshop called Fierce and Free on my website. Anybody else? We have time for 1 or 2 more questions. Can you heal yourself on your own? Yes, you can definitely do a lot of healing work by yourself. The pitfalls there are, one, it's going to take longer than if you work with someone. So for me, for example, to create this program, it took me about 15 years of toxic and abusive relationships. You don't have to go through all of that. work with someone that's already been through it, that's done the healing work. It's just going to make the process so much easier and faster. And then when you're doing trauma work, there you need to work with someone, in my opinion. You can do a lot of things by yourself, but one reason why I think the foundational work needs to be done with a practitioner is because you need to be witnessed. In order to heal, you need somebody witnessing your pain. You need somebody to hold that safe container so that you can process these uncomfortable emotions, so that you can process all the pain and suffering. That's why the trauma got created in the first place, was because you felt alone and you didn't have the capability to process what was going on in an effective way. So that's why working with someone with trauma healing is so important, because you need that safe container. You need to be witnessed. Okay, let me know if that helps. Stephanie asked if I'm going to have a workshop on avoidant attachment. I don't have anything planned right now. You can still use similar, the healing modalities I mentioned, they can be applied for all attachment styles. Maybe the aspect of consistency would be a little bit different for other styles. And you say you may have sometimes these behaviors as well. So it could be that you're more disorganized. So the disorganized style has both avoidant and anxious. And as I mentioned before, even though I identify more with secure with anxious tendencies, sometimes some people can push me into my avoidant. So that's possible for all of us. We all have traits of all styles. Okay, one last question. Do you have any questions regarding the group program? I'm also happy to answer those. And I'm going to drop the link, Unchained from Love. That's the workshop on trauma bonding. Brandy, you asked me for that one. I just put it in the chat now. Okay. And if there isn't anything else, let me know in the chat your main takeaway from today and what you liked about this masterclass. That will also help me to get feedback and to improve. So let me know what your main takeaway was and why you would recommend this masterclass to somebody else. Alex asked, when will the draw for the prize be? I'll do the draw tomorrow. And I'm also going to, like I said, I'll send you an email with all the resources. Or you'll have the inner child healing meditation, the self-compassion link, an extra €50 discount for my program. And as I mentioned, right now, the program is heavily discounted because I just wanted to make it more accessible. And yeah, I'll be doing the draw tomorrow. So if you haven't already done so, tag me on Instagram, mention the masterclass, and you can participate in the competition. Yeah, Stephanie says, main takeaway, healing is also walking away from unavailable and abusive people, not trying to fix ourselves. Yes. Thank you, Catalina. Thanks, Anka. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Ah, Carla, what a wonderful comment. Carla says, you're very calm and non-judgmental, and your direct experience makes me finally seen. This is so wholesome. Thank you so much. Emerald, I have learned a lot as I feel there's a pathway to discovering my behaviors, and just by identifying them has helped me feel more empowered. Thank you. You're very welcome. Thank you, Emerald. Thanks for joining again, Pierre. Hope to see you in the program, maybe. Lila, thank you. Patricia, Dee, Tote, I don't know how to pronounce your name, sorry. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you, Cassandra.
Thank you. Who just said thank you? Was that
Mimi. Anka, yes.
Hi, darling. Hope to see you soon.
See you.
Thank you, Fariha. And yeah, for those of you who aren't following me on Instagram, make sure to follow me there. I also share a lot of free content. Thank you, Sabrina. I'm glad. Yeah, this resonates. All right, everyone. Have a good evening. Okay, Brandy, you're very welcome. So if this is something that you would like to go deeper into, take a look at my group program. We can also hop on a call if you like. It sounds like you'd be a very good fit for the program. All right, everyone. Wishing you all a wonderful evening. Bye, Mona. I'll see you tomorrow. And don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. You can email me, message me on Instagram. I am available. Wishing you all a lovely evening or good day, depending on where you're tuning in from, and sending you lots of love from Bali. Bye.